Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, the Ruler School Circuit Series now taking orders on our Q3 2024 circuit kits, and our guest lecturer members, Fight Ramen. Class is in session.
Hey there guys, welcome back to the Tournament Report with yours truly, Paul Reisman. Today we are taking a look over the last couple of weeks of Force of Will in the tournament scene. We're going to start off today with Games and Geek and going to go through a couple of tournaments that we had abroad, and then finally we're going to end on our Circuit Series event that we had just this past weekend. So Games and Geek Online was really interesting. We ended up doing a little bit of commentary for that. Make sure to take a look at our deck archive for that. It's going to be really great for if you were just wanting to see some of the matches. All of that stuff is earlier in our YouTube archive, so make sure to do that after this video if you want to do that. Otherwise, let's get into the decks that were being represented. So we had Mindless Mujdart being the most highly represented pair of rulers in the event itself, doing some burn shenanigans, although you might also want to include Almirius Mujdart in those numbers as well. As you can see, Daniel Negretti here got first place, and he did end up winning with Almirius Mujdart. I think that's definitely an evolution of the deck itself, being able to get beyond the threshold of 4,000 life right at the start of the game, all the way up to 7k, means your opponent has to burn a lot more of you away before you lose the game than they do. So definitely Burn was at the event, and Burn definitely won the event. And the reason Burn is so prevalent right now is because we have Lian, this really powerful ruler who looks at a variety of different cards, not only on her turn, but also on the opponent's turn, giving her just a really good economy of answers and cards for a variety of decks. Incredibly powerful, very efficient engine overall. So Lian has been kind of the bane of this entire metagame and has been kind of setting the tone for the entire competitive season in this first set of Thoth of the Trinity. So outside of that, we had Ayu doing Ayu things, just finding a bunch of Olympians, swarming the field, and then doing things beyond that. Odin has been making a much larger appearance lately, especially since all the water cards that were injected into the metagame as a part of Lian's suite of cards in her starter deck, also seemed to be helping Odin out. So things like the Sphinx getting reanimated, Mirror itself being really, really helpful as well. There's a lot of different things that Odin can now employ that he probably could have before in some way, shape, or form, but the answers are just much more efficient. Going forward, we had Lucy in the metagame as well, alongside Oct, who was more of a artillerist burn shell with some other really fun things going on there as well. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean, and if you don't, you'll see in a little while. Seer Lumia also made an appearance in the metagame, and then other decks comprised the other third or so of the decks that we saw. Going into our first place list with Daniel Negretti, he was playing the Almirius list. Again, Almirius Mujdart gives you 30k, or not 30k, 3k extra life to play with compared to the MyList version. And so this was a really good pick going into a metagame where Burn was going to be the mirror match more often than not. The main deck has 4 to 1 cards, but you do see additional cards with Mujdart you can filter with her, so that's not really an issue. But the idea of the deck is either to create a situation in which you are interacting with your opponent to make sure that all of your burn spells go through, or you're playing life loss in the form of Lucifers and Roamer. Roamer is a really interesting pick. This card has been kind of here and there, but the idea that you can just play this against your opponent who is doing a whole bunch of card draw if they are playing things like Mujdart in some way, shape, or form, or even other decks that are just drawing a whole bunch of cards. Right now, Roamer seems like a really interesting pick. It just drains you 400 every single time you draw a card while you're under it, so it's kind of an interesting card in general. We also have Inferno and Magic Duel in the Moonlight. This has been one of the major ways to get your opponent down very, very quickly in terms of their life applications, is drain yourself, so you can drain them and then burn them for free using either Chivalry's Tears or Magic of Trust and Love. This means War is just there to give you an extra 2 cards at the start of the turn, start of the game, more rather, and then if you have extra copies in your hand, you can just toss them away to Chivalry's Tears, which has been really, really interesting to see. Magic Stone deck is just there to give you the variety that you need in order to cast your spells efficiently. Not much else going on there. But in the side deck, Daniel ended up playing the My List in the side, just in case he was not playing in a situation in which My List was going to be some sort of stumbling block for him. My List would be really useful in decks that were not burned themselves, but just there to be able to say, hey, I'm going to flip and burn your board. This would be really good against Ayu in particular, so I can see the My List coming in for that matchup. Other than that, it's a pretty standard sideboard setup. Obviously no Shiva, but we do have Rogue Spectator as a way to stop your opponent from gaining life, which is really good if you're a burn deck, so that kind of just makes a whole bunch of sense. And then we have other really good picks to just do some anti-metagame things in games 2 and 3. So first of all, just want to say thank you to Daniel for piloting such a good deck to a good finish, and we're going to be moving on to the next list, which is Cal Tuma. This is my second thing. I love the fact that Cal got so far with this list. Ayu is still very potent, very good, just tempo kind of engine, just being able to establish some really powerful effects if you just play the game long enough. And with the new extension rule for Ayu, you're doing really interesting things. Basically, it's Zeus with a little bit of a nerf, and that's not really that big of a nerf, all things considered. You just don't get as many toys as Zeus would. But still, that gets really good, really solid list overall. And so if you know Ayu, you know Ayu. Magic Stone deck, Possession Stone just means you get an Omni Stone for playing Ayu. Congratulations, you're playing Ayu. Here's an Omni Stone and a draw engine. Side deck, again, is just a bunch of utility stuff, including Rogue Shiva, Witch of the Quench Fire, etc., just to make it so that your opponent is not comfortable playing into you games 2 and 3. Congratulations to Cal. We're moving on to third place, which is David Smith playing the Leon deck in general. This is the cornerstone of the format, as it were. A little bit of an innovation here in playing multiple Hydrias in the main board, which I think is really different. I've not quite seen that. This might be, I'm not entirely sure what he was seeing that was warranting him main boarding 4 of this card. But it's here, and he did play 4 of it. Other than that, not much else is going on here, except this is the aggro variant with your spirits. Once you explore that, you get to play it for free, which can certainly, you know, a quarter of your life, just under a quarter of your life, is represented with just one of those bodies on board. He is opting to also play Aphrodite in the main board, and an additional flower field here for additional life gain and insulation. He's also playing Witch of the Quench Fire in order to stop burn if he's able to get it using the cube. Cube can be really helpful, especially if you scry it off the top with exploration. And then he's also playing a couple of cards in the main board in case players decide that they're going to main board Ice Shackles. Dispelling Stone is really good for that, as well as Vacuous. Vacuous can be really helpful to just say, I'm going to zap all of your Ice Shackles, and now you don't have any of them, which is really helpful. He's also playing a couple of other cards on the top end just to make sure that he has some ways to close out the game, including Sphinx and a couple of the Golem. Really, really helpful. So there is a little bit of flourish here in the main board. Very interesting to see that this is built this way, about 44 cards, but you're exploring on your turn and your opponent's, and you're doing a lot of cards all at once. Magic Stone deck is pretty standard for a Leon deck, nothing too crazy there, but we're also seeing in the sideboard, we're seeing more addition hate in the form of Killua, Lost Girl in the City, a Witch package to further extend what the cube can do. We're playing 2 more Witch of the Quench Fire in the sideboard, as well as the Pumpkin Witch train in order to close out games that way. Rogue Shiva, really good sideboard tool that you're going to be seeing I would say almost probably in every single deck going forward. A couple of Muse Staring at to protect against things like opposing mirrors, and then Mirage Spirit in the sideboard. This just feels right. Mirage Spirit in the sideboard. We're just not seeing a lot of outside of things like your Spirit or your Wise Dragons coming in. This feels like a very meta-dependent sideboard tech, so seeing it in the sideboard makes a lot of sense. Congratulations to David for getting into the top 4. Rustin is also on burn, playing Life Loss Shenanigans with his favorite card, Inferno, first and foremost in the deck. He's also playing one of Electra, a couple of Welseers just for additional messing with your opponent's shenanigans. Basically Persephone before Persephone was a card. Some ways to dig into the deck and to extend into various other combos, with Aspiring Diva going into Loki's Insight for combos, and then other ways to just lower your life and just draw a whole bunch of cards in the form of Secret Duel in the Moonlight, and then Dante enters the Game of Gods. Very solid list overall. Magic Stone deck is just going to ensure that you are able to, for the most part, again, that 80-20 split for red on turn 1, almost guaranteed on turn 2. And then the side deck is pretty standard as well. He's opting to side his Almerius, and I'm wondering if he would mainboard it now. Not entirely sure. I'm sure, knowing Rustin a little bit, I'm wondering if he just likes to be able to flip my list and swing in for damage, and he just prefers that playstyle. But Almerius definitely going first has a lot of benefits against other burn lists. Congratulations to Rustin for getting into the top 4. We're going into the top 8 breakdown here. Another Mindless Mujdart list. Nothing too crazy here, except we are seeing some Raging Messiahs in the main board, which is really great, as well as the Dodgy engine. Dodgy dumping your sealed One-Eyed Dragon so that you can bring it out with its ability and then just do some additional damage is really good. Dodgy is really good for preventing your opponent from gaining life too. So this is just really solid for that particular reason. Not much else to say here. There were just some different picks, a couple of Gradiuses, a couple of Loki's Insight, a couple of Metal Lifeform Dragons for additional burn. But for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward burn package, as we've seen before. Almerius in the sideboard again. Surging Lightning. Shoutouts to the Olivia. She's right there. She's right there, guys. Olivia topped. That counts, right? Going into Logan Moses' list, which is the one Odin list that made it in. This deck is really fascinating to watch, so if you have the ability, go and watch. I think it was the first couple of rounds we actually featured an Odin list, and it might have actually been Logan as well, but Odin has been doing some really interesting things. Mainly dumping a bunch of cards using Odin's order ability. Whenever you order something, you can dump a light card into the graveyard, and so instead of going the Brunhild route or dumping things like Sphinx, the dragon down here allows you to, once it enters the field, recover all of your entities. So basically repeating Faith Revival brings it back in, repeating Faith Revival goes back into your hand, and the dragon recovers all of the stones that you use to pay for repeating Faith Revival. So you just get a 2020 for, I believe it's a 2020. Sorry, it's a 1313 new Gwyber, is what I believe what I've been calling this. New Gwyber coming in and just recovering all of your entities. Really, really, really potent and very relevant. In addition to that, obviously Sphinxes. You also have a couple of Mistletanes in the main board. Fenrir to just turn your opponent off. You have a Silence in the form of Silmeria. And then you have a Relic package, which also does some really interesting things. I forget exactly how he was utilizing this, but it was really, really interesting to just be able to see him stacking relics on top of Mistletane or any of the other things that he is ordering. Speaking of order, probably the turn 1 play you're going to be doing is playing the Treasure Tree to just explode your mana and play a whole bunch of stuff on your turn. Ramping into a Sphinx is no joke at all. So it's very interesting. I didn't even realize he played one of the Archer as well. It's very solid. Going into the sideboard, he's playing some really interesting things too, like Nidhogg, your third Mistletoe, Your Replicant Odin, which is very relevant in this list. You can buff your own board, or you can just remove your opponent's graveyard, I believe, too. Very, very interesting to see that he's just able to buff his own board and destroy his opponent's stones. Very, very, very cool to see. Sideboard is pretty fun, and we're also seeing, I suppose I should mention this a little bit too, but it's really good to see Fair Spell back in the metagame. This card has always been like a really decent staple, but now that we don't have conflict, this card is seeing a lot more play and a lot more varied play, even outside of decks that don't run greens. This card is really solid, really good to see it back as well. Congratulations to Logan for getting into the top 8. Going into Derek's list, this was a very interesting match to behold, frankly. Derek definitely hardcore thought about the metagame here. Being able to play Seer to pop things to just gain general advantage was really relevant. He's playing things like his Zeus Alice, Diversity Palace line, but he's basically just holding back and just making some meager trades with his opponent on the Leon deck, and just recognizing that Leon is not going to kill him early in the game. So he has some ways to just take away their advantage incrementally over time. This is a very force of will deck. And by that, I mean just playing small little interactions here and there to make your opponent not feel nearly as comfortable as they continue to put things on the board and just slowly chip away at the things they need to win the game in the Leon matchup. So with that, you're seeing things like producing tokens on your opponent's board with the Inquisitor, so you can pop things with Fantastic Trick, for instance, and in doing so, you get to trigger your Trials of Kaguya to be able to get additional advantage, dig deeper into your deck, recycle some things, get Wind Chime so you can have additional mana. Just little interactions here and there that just allow you to slowly gain advantage and just take away some of the pivotal plays that the Leon deck has without committing too much to the board yourself. So it was really interesting to watch Derek pilot this list. Definitely give this a pause and take a look at this either here or even just on the website down in the description. There's some really interesting things here. So here's his sideboard. Again, we're looking at just ways to incrementally make it so that your opponent just does not have a really good time against you if they continue to play into your stuff and you just react and take that advantage away. Congratulations to Derek. Definitely one of my favorite decks of this tournament to watch, and just watch him slowly just gain life off of a Lumia every turn, eventually flip it so he can do things like Sword of Progression infinitely. Very, very interesting in general just to watch that consistently. So congratulations to Derek for getting into the top cut. Steven Jeswin. Oh, Steven. Oh, Steven. What do I say about Steven? First of all, Steven loves red aggro. He loves it to death. And he is doing, frankly, really degenerate things. He is reaching his hand into the outer world itself and pulling out things like Force of Will, the movie promo, to do things with Artillerist that were never intended. But we're doing him anyway. So here we go. The reason he's playing Crimson Moon's Battleground is so he can go into Crimson Girl and Bahamut. Ignore Carlina, ignore the Prego. These two are just there for the memes. They don't facilitate anything in the deck at all. They just exist. The real two in here in the sideboard are Bahamut and Little Red the Wolf Girl. Bahamut in games 2 and 3 can just tutor you a Yamada, which can, in combination with Raging Messiah and Artillerist, just kind of end the game. Basically, that's kind of just what you're doing with the deck, is you're getting Artillerist, you're dumping things under Raging Messiah, and just closing out the game with Burn. Funniest burn list ever, and in fact, Force of Will the movie is now banned in all formats. It's technically it was a playable card, and now it's not, so don't try this at home. Congratulations to Steven for getting Force of Will the movie banned in all Force of Will tournaments. Very funny. Everyone absolutely loved this when they saw it on stream. I certainly did. What a meme deck. Absolutely super fun. Congratulations, Steven. In some ways, I think you won the entire GP. So congratulations for getting into the top cut. Let's head over to Guangzhou. Again, we're looking at a very similar metagame. This is about a week later, and we're seeing, again, Milas Mujdart doing things very similar. Kalok ends up winning the entire thing. So congratulations to him for winning with Burn. It's pretty standard. If you saw it in the last GP, it's pretty much the same here. Magic Stone deck is just there for consistency. What I really do appreciate, in addition to the sided Almerius, is we're playing Look of Corruption, which I think is a really good way of just saying these cards that you were holding back in your Leon deck, not anymore. And they're just absolutely gone. You're not getting them back unless you're playing a Horn, which I don't know many Leon decks that are actually doing that outside of a couple players that I know. If they're watching this, they know who they are. But I think Look at Corruption is a really good game 2 and 3 card, as well as Solarius Water, very solid. Yiming Lao also playing, this is kind of just a repeat of, in a lot of ways, it's just kind of just a repeat of the Games and Geek Online, with Ayu coming in second. Ayu's doing Ayu things once again. Congratulations to Yiming Lao for that. I'm not going to talk about this too much just because we do have a little bit of a ways to go, but it's interesting that they're playing the Orb for their Electra in the sideboard. Zhang Cheng Tan is on Lumia Sherry, which I think is really interesting. We haven't actually seen a lot of this combination lately, but it's still very viable. Lumia did get a recent card that just banishes and exiles a ton of really powerful cards for really cheap if you're playing Lumia. So this deck, just very control oriented, just drawing you a whole bunch of cards, which is really helpful. Not much else to say here other than it's a control deck and it's doing a lot of Scheherazade things compared to some other things that I've seen. Your main win condition is probably going to be Lumia's Rage. Lumia's Rage is a really good way to just say, hey, you're burned and dead. And it gets around Witch of the Quench Fire because it is not, turns out, a red card. Even though it has a lot of red in its art, it is not a fire card. So really good way of getting around Witch of the Quench Fire for game. Going into 4th place, Wai King O playing Odin. Again, Odin, very powerful. We're seeing Final Stance shenanigans along with repeating Faith Revival. They're opting to play the Brunhild package though, which I think very interesting way of sort of dealing with if I want to pivot in the middle of the game, going in a different direction, being able to pitch Brunhilds instead so that my Artillerist does more damage, or I'm able to pop more things with Odin enters the Game of Gods. Really interesting to see that you can just go in a couple of different directions because of that. Magic Stone deck is just going to give you access to everything you need for the most part. 4 Moonshades, 4 of the 4 Sea Stone, and then 2 of the white-blue. Side deck is going to include Ice Shackles. I think this card is severely underrated. This card should be, I think, in a lot more lists. They're only playing 3 here. And I wonder if 4 would be warranted to some degree, just to say to Leon, you don't get to win the game anymore. That being said, if you do have this on the field, you can kind of get around the fact that your Mistletoe has an activate ability as a J ruler, because this only hits rulers. Very interesting, isn't that? Playing a couple of Ega Stone too. I think this card is actually really solid. It's a way of just yeeting an entire board, which I think is really good, or just making a bunch of things that your opponent has to suddenly deal with. And we're not seeing a lot of board wiping being present in the game outside of maybe some of the burn decks with my list. So this interesting card to see in the sideboard. Congratulations to Wei King Ao for getting into the top 4. Going into top 8, a Machina deck in the year of our Lord 2024. How fascinating. A lot of really interesting combos here. We're seeing the sort of infinite falchion shenanigans that you can do, just piling a whole bunch of counters on falchion with Spirit of Calmness. Very interesting interaction, just being able to play Death Scythe. I'm not really sure exactly what else is going on here other than the fact that you get to do that neat little interaction. But good heavens, there's so much going on, and I love every piece of this. Let us know if you would pilot this deck, because there's a lot of really interesting things going on here. Side deck is pretty standard. They're siding Order Loki. Very fascinating. Not really sure what to do with that, other than maybe they're playing Fenrir's in the main games 2 and 3. If it's against maybe IU. Not really sure what's going on here, but that is a very fascinating idea. Congratulations to G.A. Liu. We're moving now into Chakwang Lang. Leong, excuse me. I'm going to be messing up all of the Chinese names. Sorry, guys. But we are playing Order Nyarlathotep. Really interesting to see this get into this level of player contention. All things considered, I thought this deck would not be doing very good without Magic Stone, Dance of Chaos, or even her other spell, Manifestation of Power, to be able to ramp. But you can still do some really interesting things, it turns out. Calamity Shield is in the main board, as well as Isis and the 1-drop Resonator, the Nyarlathotep Resonator, essentially, doing some really interesting things with Resonance here. Red Fire, Red Flare, I believe it's called. I'm not entirely sure, but just additional burn is really, really helpful. Leowolf is here, so you can try and blow him up with all of the different spells that do that sort of thing. He won't die, he'll just get bigger, and then you get other things, which is really, really helpful. So things like your Cthulhu tokens. Based on the number of stones you have, you just get a whole bunch of Cthulhus that can rush the field. Very interesting to see guys on the field. Most decks have been opting to play burn, and that's not something we have right now, so I think that's really interesting. Just little tech choices here as well. Girl Staring At, always a very good card. Electra in case the game goes long. Then Exorcist Mage, basically Mirage Spirit before Mirage Spirit. So it's really interesting to see that this card is actually making a little bit of an appearance. Congratulations! This is really interesting to see. I'm really glad that we actually have an aggro list that is not just burn, making it into the top cut. Although if you really needed it, it looks like you just have Shev Steers in the sideboard, so yeah, there we go. Moving into the another Odin deck. This using the Dark Alice, which I think is really interesting to just peek at the opponent's hand and get rid of stuff. Flash Freeze is also really good. Fire Igniter, Faria, Igniter of Holy Flame alongside First Boon, really good to just extend your card advantage. Hugin and Moonin, this card has never seen play, but it's being present here in this particular list. A lot of really interesting things going on with Odin across the Pacific. So congratulations for getting into the top cut with these really interesting set of cards that we're seeing here. Zenhua Chen is playing Lian. Not really too much else to say here. They opted for the Spirit aggro variant alongside Kiki's. Not much else to say here. The Grimoire is really good for just gaining a whole bunch of life, especially against burn. It's really helpful to just have at least one of those maybe alongside your Flower Garden. Really good for that. Sideboard includes a bunch of other treasures that can be really useful if you see them off the top, and as well as a couple of Vacuous to just get rid of Ice Shackles as a means of slowing you down. Just being able to say that's gone, and it's very, very gone, because I'm just going to zap it out of existence as well. Moving on to the Giga-Bites Cafe Ruler School Circuit event, we are looking at Justin Shropshire getting into the top cut and winning the whole thing. We're looking at Alice Abdul. Not seen this combination before, but we're playing a lot of really interesting things, including 3 Vacuous in the main board, Ray Aznable, Really interesting to see that this card is seeing play right now. We're seeing it Sacrificial Altar alongside the Ega Stone. Really good way of just saying, I'm going to make a whole bunch of spiders and then sack them all off and just find my Electra and end the game, or find even a Sphinx and end the game. It's going to be really helpful for me to just do that kind of thing. The Cheshire Engine is really good for just looking at additional cards and just having a good barrier resonator as well. Very strong for that. Abdul being a very strong ruler in general. Once you flip him, your opponent has to get rid of him, or else they do not have enter effects. That can still be relatively relevant in certain metagames. So it's really interesting to see that he actually won this entire thing. Magic Stone deck, you're going to get some Pure Heart Stones alongside a variety of different stones to get the things you need. A couple of Ice Shackles and Lumia in the sideboard as well. I think that's really interesting, being able to swap out a particular ruler and just reap all the benefits of that. Side deck is really interesting. We have the Witch Train in the side, just to be able to say, hey, I'm going to end the game now. I'm going to end the game now. It's turn 5. I'm going to end the game now. Very helpful. Other than that, congratulations to Justin for getting into the, just winning the whole thing. Congratulations to Justin for doing that. Theo Bob is also playing a Bahamut Seer. Shenanigans, burn you to death. That's what we're doing. We're also playing Thunder of Zeus, burn you for game. Very, very funny. Under Raging Messiah, it's also just game, so that's really funny. So there's a couple of different ways to just end your opponent. But Thunder of Zeus is definitely one of the funniest, I gotta say. Magic Stone deck is pretty standard, and then side deck is also relatively standard as well for Baha Seer. Ryan Lilly playing Dracula Lumia. What is going on with this tournament? It's very fascinating. I've never seen something quite like this, but here we go. I'm not even sure exactly what everything that goes on in here, other than just having really powerful Dracula cards that have just never seen the light of day for one reason or another. But again, we're seeing the same Sacrificial Altar plus Ega Stone, whatever mode you need it to be. Ega Stone is going to be really, really strong. And then if you want to make a bunch of spiders, you can use that altar to find your Electra or your Sphinx to just make it really hard for your opponent to fight back from there. Sideboard, also pretty standard. Siding looks like Grimia. A Grimia package. Oh my gosh. Very cool things. Very, very cool things in this entire list. So Ryan, if you're watching this, let us know kind of what your whole game plan was down in the chat. There's a lot of really cool things going on with your list, and really appreciate seeing Dracula actually make an appearance. Zach Tufford is in 4th place with Order Loki. Oh my gosh, I can't even speak right now. Order Loki is here, doing his Order Loki shenanigans. There's a lot of things this deck is doing, including drawing you a bunch of cards, discarding your opponent's cards, playing your giant to just deal a whole bunch of board wiping effects. It's very fun. This deck in general is really, really interesting, and it's also playing a Prisia package, which I thought was also really interesting as well. It is playing Sphinx, so it does have a late game control option, really showcasing that you can maybe just play any ruler you want, and if you're playing well enough, you could just potentially win. Hope for Olivia, maybe. Sideboard includes your Witch Train, again, Fair Spells, Magic Stone of, or Sealing Stone of Ega here, alongside your Shiva. No Rogue, think that's really interesting. Opting to play Illumia instead probably makes a little sense if I know how Zack is piloting this deck, but it's just really cool to see just like a straight up bug control doing really interesting things, including absorbing knowledge. The longer I look at this, the more impressed and the more I love it. So congratulations to Zack. Moving on to Hayden, who is playing Math.deck. Math deck, do math. Helen is a very fascinating deck in terms of just being able to just win the game by doing math. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Just get a whole bunch of witches, do witchy things, protect yourself with mirror, eventually play your cube in a very different way than you would if you were Leon. You're not doing that anymore. You are just playing a bunch of witch tribal do math shenanigans, excavate your own life until you win the game. Woo! Other than that, sideboard, bunches of witches. Just bunch of witches. Preston Field is here with Order Athenia. This man, he knew I was going to review this, and he's using all the tools, all the good tools. Foroborazuki, 3 Death Speaker Monk, Forbidden Words to cancel from the graveyard, Shinjiro, Essence of Athenia, your trees, your Gil Lapis, which is really interesting in this list as well. He's playing a couple of the Athenia Enters the Game of Gods. He's not playing any of the Death Scythes, so he's definitely just trying to do something completely different here. He's playing a couple of the new Forgotten Head of Titanophil here. This is a really good substitute for Elixir's Love if you're looking for something like this. It allows you to buy something back from the grave or RFG and then unclog your hand from there, so it can be kind of interesting to get certain things into rotation. This card is really solid for that. A couple of Inferno as well. This can just be bought back with the head, so it looks like at some point we're just milling a whole bunch of stuff looking for very particular cards, and then we have a bunch of one-ofs, including one of Perfect Loki to just hit the board really hard because you're milling a whole bunch of cards. I think that's really interesting. Replicant Odin I think is also really good in Athenia in general because he can just tuck some cards back that you are going to have plenty of in your graveyard. You can just tuck those back, play him, blow up your opponent's stones, and basically just win the game from there. One of Electra also seems really solid in Athenia. Can't really complain. This all just looks really solid. So congratulations to Preston for getting into the top 8 and then also making me feel great as a Order Athenia stan. Sideboard is really interesting as well. We've got one of the Lich. I have never been able to pull off Lich, so I'm really curious as to why he had that there. And there are some other just really interesting things in there, including a couple of Elixir's Loves just to back up the Titanophil head, the Forgotten Discovery of Remnants as well. So really love this, really cool to see. Congratulations to Preston, and we're going to move on to the last and final tournament for today's showcase. We're looking at the Ruler School Circuit Series online for August 3rd this past weekend. And I got to get my names out here, just give me a second. There were a lot of... Where's my list here? Since I don't know anyone's usernames, here we go. We are looking at Jeremy Lindley playing Seer Baja, just doing burn shenanigans. Again, Thunder of Zeus, Artillerist, with Yamada, being able to tutor that almost immediately with Bahamut's front side here. Very solid in general. Just here we go. Playing the token generator in order to pop certain things in your opponent's field to then trigger your trials, which I believe are down here. Your treasuries are Apollosphere, Arkskir's Grail, your treasure tree for just additional mana, and then you have again your one of your many moons, the one that produces you a bunch of will, which I'm totally just blanking on right now. Magical Wind Chime is here as well. Very solid card in this. It's kind of staple for Seer decks at this point. So not much else going on here, except it's just, we're just doing burn combos. And we get to do that because we're Seer Baja, and we have a little bit more. Again, Little Maria is here. Probably one of the more under-respected cards that probably just needs to go alongside Chef's Tears at this point. This card is just getting totally put on the hit list by the Lindley brothers specifically. This card is just very solid. Magic Zone deck, pretty standard. You're getting the mana you need. Your sideboard is also pretty standard. Your Rogue Shiva, an additional Apollosphere package alongside Witch of the Quench Fire to say to your opponent you don't get to do anything. The New Moon card that we got for Seer as well, Fleeting Moon Jewel, that's the name of the card. Of course, I just thought of it right after I said it, but here we are. Two Friends and a Cat. I think this card is actually maybe a tool that can be utilized a lot more. Maybe even in the main deck potentially if you're expecting a lot of Leon decks. This card is very solid for that. Other than that, congratulations to Jeremy for winning yet again another tournament, first place. Let's move on to second place. This one's going to be a little more vertical, so it's just bear with me here for a second. We're looking at an altar Leon deck. So this version of the deck plays Sacrificial Altar to sacrifice all of your Kikis or other resonators that you don't need anymore and just look for a big chungus to end the game with. So you're going to be seeing things like Sacred Burial to ramp you a stone, which also tucks back a card and draws you a card. So this card is very mana efficient, very helpful, especially if you're a deck who really likes to have additional magic stones. We're also playing our 9/9 package to be able to cheat in free cards that are going to be dealing 9. The Cube and our Witch, pretty standard stuff pretty much all the way through up until the point where we see our Electra, which is normally the card that we're going to be using our altar to find. We also are playing The Last Believer with Parasols. This is also a really good way to just close out the game because you do just have so many cards in your hand. Pretty much everything else here is pretty standard, but this is one of the many variants of Leon that we have been seeing, piloted by Tuan Quabriac. Again, my apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, but congratulations, Tuan. It's really great. Magic Stone deck, pretty standard again. Sideboard is not too crazy. We are seeing Lucifers in the sideboard, which I think is really, really interesting. This is a really good card to play and then sack to altar as well, just draining your opponent's life a little bit. This is also a way to sort of insulate yourself against burn and just sort of whittle your opponent down a little bit, especially it counters their Lucifers, which is, somewhat important if you think about it in the long term of things. Especially since you're a little bit more aggressive with your spirits, being able to say, yeah, your Lucifers don't do anything because I have Lucifers on board and then I'm going to be swinging in the air seems pretty good. So I think this is a really good pick overall. Moving on, we are looking at Burim Vrelas, also playing Bahamut, but this time playing it with Alice. Little Maria shenanigans, burn, dumping a bunch of dragons. Not much else to say here other than, again, Little Maria probably just needs to go. Thunder of Zeus, popularized at this point, I'm convinced, by Mr. Jeremy Franklin. Thunder of Zeus, very funny card overall in general. We're also seeing a bunch of witches in the sideboard, a couple of vacuous alongside Ice Shackles. Doesn't really hurt you all that much, other than, if you're trying to activate Bahamut multiple times, that could potentially disrupt you a little bit, but for the most part, if you're siding in Ice Shackles, you're probably taking that into account in your play lines. So congratulations to Burim for getting into the top cut here. Moving on to Mr. Patrick Ogrentz. Look but don't touch. Valentina 1. Where did this come from? It's here. We're doing shenanigans. We're drawing additional cards with our Space-Time Witch of Mott alongside our Falchions and Spirit of Calmness. Vacuous is here alongside Aphrodite, and then we're doing a ton of different shenanigans with Infinance, with our skateboard boy. Oh my gosh, this looks super fun. I have a general idea of what he's doing here just because there are a bunch of 2-drop water resonators that are getting a lot of value, but man, this is some cool stuff. Falchion's interaction with Boy Staring At here is very interesting in the sense that he can discard it and then just draw an additional card. So this is definitely feeling more combo deck in a sense, and then just being able to infinite swing with Falchion. I will say that I turn Patrick onto Falchion and he realizes the greatness that is the Iron Man. Yeah, I don't Hierophant Green, he's here, man, he's here. Side deck, he's playing Mirrors on the side. Not expecting that, didn't expect that, but he does really like his Lightning Rod Mermaids as well. A lot of interesting things here in the sideboard to consider. Patrick, tell me more about this, man, so I can tell the masses. I think this is really cool to finally see Valentina do some really interesting things. Congratulations for getting into the top 4, buddy. Rustin is back with basically the same deck he was playing earlier. Not much else. Actually, I don't think he changed much else other than taking out one Welser for a Affairs spell. Other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward. Final Battle in the sideboard, I think, is a really good pick if you want to Inferno somebody. This is just a way for your opponent to have a negative stat neg for the entire turn, as well as lowering your own life into a situation in which you're able to just take advantage of that and play Inferno. So, not much else to say there. Rustin, congratulations for getting into top 8. Another Bahamut Alice, this time from, I want to say, this is Matthew Lindley. You can tell because there's a 720. That's how you can tell. Again, Little Maria doing a ton of shenanigans, bunches of dragons, pitching dragons to deal a bunch of burn damage. Not much else to say about this list other than maybe the play lines are significantly different. But other than that, good heavens. Here we are. Recover your ruler, do some judgmenting. Wow, I don't know what else to say here other than just throw dragons at them. That's the deck. We also have m.ha with Ayu doing Ayu things. At this point in the video, you should know that Ayush is throwing a bunch of Olympians at people at this point. And then we have Ayush, come on deck, I believe in you. m.ha, a quote from the man, the myth, the legend, who's just above Ayush. Again, just doing Olympian shenanigans. So guys, let me know what you thought. I didn't even do the ruler breakdown, but for the most part, it's it's Burn, or it's Ayu, or it's Valentina 1. That was the whole field of about 16 players. Other than that, guys, there's been a lot of Force of Will over the last couple of weeks. We hope you enjoyed this video. There is some variety that is cropping up here and there, but man, I don't know about you, I'm interested in Banless Season. I'm looking forward to maybe a few of these cards getting the axe, including Chev's Tears would be great just to see that card gone, as well as Little Maria, who's enabling a lot of really ridiculous combos with things like all of the searchers that we have available to us. Outside of that, I'm not really sure what else, but I'm sure I'm talking about it on a podcast sometime here in the future. Otherwise, guys, this has been Paul. We hope you enjoyed the tournament report. Go down in the comment section down below and tell us what deck you did not expect to see, because I certainly didn't expect to see a whole bunch of decks. And then give us a like, hit subscribe, ring that bell for more things like this. And until next time, guys, this has been Paul. Class is dismissed.